is we're going to get I'm going to show you how to trim a pork butt, and this is mostly just for home use, but I'll show you little tips and tricks. So it's already done. It's wrapped up. I'm going to just drain the juices off into my bucket or into my pan. You want to keep all your juices, because the pork, once you pull the pork, it'll all soak back up. Okay, so get in here, right, and look at, just, you can zoom it in or whatever. Your bone pulls out, okay? See how easy that pulled out? That means it's done. If the bone does not come out easily, you're gonna have a hard time because you can't go put it back on the smoker at this point. You want to cook it to at least 190 degrees. This one was cooked to about 205. It makes it super, super tender. Okay. So I'm gonna just kind of pick up chunks of it here and lay it out. Get the rest of our juices. Don't want to waste any juices. All right, we're gonna set, this is the horn. This is where the bone was. We're gonna set this aside for right now. We're gonna get some good chunks out of this. So what I'm gonna show you here is where the fat cap is. I'm just gonna kind of peel this back. Okay, that's really the fat cap there. This is the tubes that was underneath the fat cap. Okay, we're gonna set this aside. That's kind of some fat stuff there. I'm gonna set this aside for right now. I'm gonna show you. I'm gonna take my knife. I'm gonna take the dull end. I'm not gonna take the sharp end. And I'm gonna turn it over first. I'm gonna scrape using the dull side of a knife. You can just a dull edge. You don't want to use a sharp edge. I'm just going to scrape this layer of fat off. You want to use a little pressure, but not too much. You don't want to destroy your meat underneath it. Underneath that fat cap and between that second layer of fat that was under here, there's a fine layer of meat. And barbecue enthusiasts and competition cooks like myself would call this the bacon. See how I just used my knife there and I just kind of peeled with the dull edge. I just kind of peeled that fat away. Okay. And so now all this extra nonsense here, you don't want that. Okay. This is called the bacon. This is what my bacon here is a little charred on this side, which might not necessarily be a bad thing, but the more you can protect it with the fat cap, the better. So you just kind of pull it off in strands. And if it's got some extra fat on it, you can pull the fat off the individual strands as well. I won a People's Choice contest at my work. There was there were some teams there that were some guys that knew what they were doing, and most of them are just backyard cooks, and that would mostly be considered what I am as well, even though I do compete on the professional side. And this is how I prepared my box. Most other guys, they just turned in like sample cups and everything, and I very meticulously had my bacon prepared like this, and the judges were completely blown away by it. Now, they weren't KCBS judges. I think maybe one of them was, but and that's the bacon right there. And so then you take your Blues Hog Championship blend, which is a blend of 3 sauces already. The 3 sauces that I would mix regardless. Just a little dab will do you. Mix this together, and you've got the absolute best part of the pork butt, or the pork shoulder. Again, this is that layer of meat between the layers of fat. So if you take that fat cap when you're trimming your pork, if you take that fat cap off when you're trimming, you're taking this layer of meat off as well. Or if you don't take that layer of meat off, it's going to be way overcooked and you're not going to be able to eat it. It's going to be too crunchy. It's not going to be tender and moist and juicy and win you first place trophies. Because this is out of this world. Okay. So down here where the bone was, this is called the horn. The horn is where we get some really good chunks from, okay? When you're preparing a turn-in box, you just kind of want to pull these apart. You're looking for some good pieces of bark. Like that's way too tender, you know, for it to be considered for chunks. Might be able to turn this piece in right here. That's a nice piece with good bark on this side and tender bits in here. I'm going to go ahead and just shred it though, since this is for somebody else. This is just for eating. Okay, so now we're just gonna. I do prefer to do this by hand. I have claws, which I don't like to use. I have a pulled pork drilling tool that I use on my drill that will pull this very, very quickly. I like to use my hands though. I like to see where the muscles are, and sometimes the pulling tool, if you're only doing a couple, I like to have more of the personal approach. If I'm doing like 10, like for a catering job, yeah, I'll use that tool because I can do about 5 at once pretty easily. Any more than that, it's way too much. Okay. Pulled pork goodness. Okay. This is also part of the horn. Okay, now right here what we have, this is where the tubes are, and then our money muscle is right here, and I'll show you that in just a second. So you can see right here, see this strand right here? This is one of your tubes. See how you can pull this out? These are just different muscle fibers. If you just come in here with your fingers, and it's still really super hot. I got cloth gloves underneath these gloves here, and it's still hot. If you just come in here and you can just feel where the different muscle groups are, and they're tender enough, you can just pull them apart. Now, you don't have to do this. I'm just showing you the different ways that you can get your like the consistency that you want, like from your if you want to make slices and stuff. Like the tubes here, they pull apart. It's like string cheese almost. See that? And a lot of people will use that as well for their turn-in boxes for pulled pork for competitions. But your tubes got to be really, really tender and have a lot of flavor. Typically, they may have less flavor because they're deep inside. I mean, they'll taste good, don't get me wrong, but you get most of your flavor from the surface to the especially where the money muscle is, because that's the part where the rub is. The rub will penetrate, but it's not going to penetrate too deep. That's why a lot of times you want to inject. The more you inject, the more flavor you're injecting into the meat. And some people don't like to inject. They have they just don't believe in it because pork does have a lot of fat in it, so it's going to provide a lot of its own juices. And if that's what you want to do, that's perfectly fine. You do you. If you don't like to inject your pork, then don't inject it. Everybody has their own style, and there's no wrong way or right way. There are some things that I would say, do or don't do. Like, don't pull your pork off the smoker at 165 degrees, and think it's going to be, yeah, you can eat it at that temperature. Don't get me wrong, but you ain't gonna be able to pull it. It's not gonna be tender enough. So here I'm just taking this and just kind of working it through, and this is so hot. And we're gonna mix all this up in our juices here. Let's get a little more here. Some of these interior pieces can tend to get a little dried out. That's why you want to make sure you save all those juices, because those dried pieces are the pieces that are a little more dry than the pieces that were around the fat groups, the fat veins. They will soak up this juice that I've got here and there in the bottom of the pan, and they'll retain it too. Hot. It's super, super hot. I mean, it's been off the smoker for a while. It's still just blazing hot, which is good. Okay. All right, now we're going to look at this money mussel. So our money mussel is right here. We're going to be able to get some good slices out of that. I'm going to just pull the rest of this. Just chunk it up. Now, normally for home cooks, you don't care about the money mussel. You're going to shred it like everything else. But I do want to show you what you can do with the money mussel. Now, the money mussel is at the opposite end of where the bone was, and if you cook it if you overcook it where it's too tender, the money mussel will fall apart. So we're going to see how tender my money mussel is. Don't laugh at that. And this is not the consistency that I would use for a competition. It's mainly because I didn't trim it. I didn't do a competition trim on this ahead of time, which I trimmed back the muscle groups for a competition. So I isolate, everything's got to still be intact, but I isolate the money mussel, and I cut the tubes way back. And you have to have at least 4.5 pounds on a pork butt. I'll trim it down to usually about 6. So this is actually a really good money mussel. Yeah, we don't need that. Okay. So the money mussel, you slice them into these medallions here. So still a little bit of fat there that's holding that together. That's really, really tender. It's rendered out pretty well. So it's really easy to, it's not going to be chewy fat. It's going to melt in your mouth. This piece. That is good stuff. Okay. All right, so we're going to get all this juice worked in here. Does the cameraman want a piece of pork? Okay, now we're going to take our championship blend, Blues Hog Championship blend. We're going to go this, like this, like this. Okay, doesn't need a ton of sauce, but the Blues Hog Championship blend is an absolute perfect blend, competition blend. It's what lots of people use. And people tell me all the time when they have my pork, they say your pork is amazing, and I'll have it out and I'll have some sauce there with it, some sauce that I have at home, never Casey Masterpiece or something like that, but some Plowboy sauce or even some Blues Hog, and I'll set it out and they'll say, oh, your pork is so awesome, it doesn't need sauce. And I don't tell them it does have a little sauce on it already. But the trick is like anything, everything in moderation. I used to not like to sauce anything, and then I realized sauce actually adds another unique flavor. But you don't want it drowning in sauce. So this really worked in good here. Okay. And so this is for a friend of mine. So I'm going to go ahead and just put the little slices here. Little Money Muscle slices. He'll open that up and be like a little Christmas treat. Even though it's not Christmas, it's Easter. So. That's good stuff. Well, might chew on that later. All right. Thanks for watching the video. Hope you learned something. If you have a question, feel free to leave a comment. Thanks for watching.